So as we approach the end of the year, a lot of businesses here in the region looking to set sail for 2026, also reflecting on 2025. What golf businesses are entering 2026 with a sharper focus on operational efficiency, compliance and technology-led transformation. That's according to the team at Sovereign PPG. They, of course, have been looking at companies throughout the entirety of this year. Sovereign PPG is the leading business formation support company in the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman and Saudi Arabia. They cover every aspect of establishing and maintaining a legal commercial entity, amongst others. So looking at what businesses have been doing in 2025, but also looking ahead to 2026. Let's talk now to the Senior Sales Manager from Sovereign PPG, Jade Wong, who's been kind enough to join us live in the studio this morning. Jade, lovely to see you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
So what would, looking ahead, actually, let's look back, if we can, first and foremost. 2025, what sums up the approach for GCC companies at the moment? What have you seen change in the last 12 months?
I think not just for the past 12 months, I would say it's probably the past few years. We've seen a lot of changes. There's been a lot of incentives for companies to set up here. And the GCC all round, we've seen, a lot of movement. And a lot of that's come down to, there was 100% foreign ownership announcement. There was a lot of changes to regulations. And it's encouraged a lot of companies to consider the GCC as a place to set up. So there's been a lot of incentives and a lot of changes. Companies now have to consider some of the compliance measures moving forward. We get a lot of questions around what do they need to consider, not just in the short term, but also in the long term. A lot of companies don't realise that there's requirements like UBO disclosure. Banks are very strict nowadays in comparison to what they were a few years ago. So there's been a lot of changes, but it's all been for the good. And I think a lot of businesses are now considering the GCC region seriously as a place to set up their business in the long run.
Let's look at some of those inquiries that you've been getting. Tax compliance, inquiries up 152% year on year as well. Again, something that, a lot of companies might not have asked about in the past, but now very much to the fore.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Corporate tax came into place a few years ago as well. But again, I think this year, more so than ever, because we're getting so many more inquiries in general, they have a lot more questions around what they need to consider. So a lot of companies will, discuss whether they need to set up onshore or whether in a free zone, and whether it will work to their benefit if they set up in a free zone. Will they be exempt from corporate tax? So there's a lot of questions. But again, I think companies now are starting to look at the long-term picture rather than just setting up a company in the short term. They're looking, what that's going to do in the future as well, and also how that might apply to their parent company back in the home country.
One of the themes that we've been talking about throughout the year here on the Business Breakfast is of office space at the moment. And one term that seems to have been governing that is family offices. There's been a real move internationally, a number of family offices setting up here. Why is that the case at the moment? Is this just the perfect sort of timing and place in terms of family offices set up?
Well, we've seen a huge increase of inquiries coming from the UK, for example. The recent budget announcement did mean that there was a lot of high net worth individuals now looking at places like Abu Dhabi Global Market and DIFC to set up structures for wealth management or wealth structures, and they're looking for tax advice as well around all of that. But that's all part of what they want to do in the long term in terms of succession planning ahead for their families. There's been a huge demand for those types of inquiries as well.
Huge demand for governance as well this year as well. Are more businesses prioritising governance? Have we seen more of that?
Definitely. Compliance measures are up more so than ever, really. So companies are now looking at how they structure not just their company setup, but in the long term, what approach they're going to take in terms of what compliance measures there are. I think a lot of companies now are looking at who they hire as well internally to manage all of that for them. It's...
But But are people? I mean, excuse the silly question, but are people still hiring, or are they just getting AI to do everything for them these days?
Not so much. I would say people are still hiring, and I think a lot of companies who actually set up don't realise that you do need to at least have one person on ground in the UAE to act as a signatory for a lot of purposes, like bank account opening, to sign a lease agreement, to sign contracts. So operationally, a lot of companies actually don't realise that they have to do that in the initial stages. So it's something that we actually discuss early on. Having that presence, having someone physically available here in the UAE is very important.
What's been the sort of focus for you in terms of offices setting up here as well? Is it with an idea to sort of expand across the Gulf, or are they just looking to get a footprint here?
I think initially, a lot of the inquiries that we're getting, the first thoughts are UAE, but a lot of the time they're talking about Saudi as well, and the rest of the region for that matter. You've got Qatar, Bahrain on the doorstep, and Saudi is moving in the right direction as well. So a lot of companies are thinking to actually set up here initially and then branch into Saudi, or somehow take their presence there as well.
That's 2025. So we've talked about the year of governance here. What's 2026 look like for you and the rest of the team at Sovereign?
I think it's going to be very busy.
Okay.
I mean, personally, I've been here around about 12 years. I've never seen it as busy as it is at the moment. So I do think there's going to be even more, wealth structures that we'll be looking at, foundation setups, but also, I mean, across the region. It's not just UAE. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Saudi, and I think it's going to be a very positive year.
So 2026, a year of setup, obviously, for a number of organisations, but you need to be disciplined as well, I'm sure, to stay relevant here.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because, I mean, GCC, people are looking at it as a competitive place, but also an attractive place to set up a business in the long run. And I think it's really important for companies who are considering to set up here is to weigh up their options, take their time, but also consider that to be prepared to operate effectively and operate at a high standard.
Jade, really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much indeed.
Thank you.
A Monday morning, no less. Just a few days away from Christmas. So, Jade, really appreciate coming into the studio. Jade Wong is the Senior Sales Manager for Sovereign PPG, joining us live here in the studio on the Business Breakfast.